I'm Presh Williams from Big Picture Film Club, joined by my co-host.
Avisha.
And we are here at the London Independent Film Festival, virtually, of course. And we are here with a great selection of filmmakers who've got a variety of short films to showcase at this film festival. So we're just going to have a chat. And if you'd be so kind, if everyone could sort of like introduce themselves and like say what film they've got screening and what the film's about briefly. So Angelica, we could start with you.
Sure. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Angeliqa Devi, and I am a actress, and this is the first time that I wrote a screenplay and directed. So it's really exciting for me to be here, and really exciting for me to have been chosen by this film festival, because I rate it, and I love how it's going forward despite everything. This, you know, I was so excited to be selected, and then a bit disappointed at the idea that it won't be in person. But then at the same time, I realized that all of our films can go out to so many more people this way. And that's exciting for me, because I guess I find it difficult to separate some of my art from activism. So I have a kind of a artistic activism thing going on. Not always and not all the time, but certainly with this piece, yes. So my little film is called A Fairy Tale, and it's basically about a little girl who's woken up in the middle of the night, and she's given a task. And this task is ultimately so terrifying for her that the only way that she can sort of go about fulfilling the task is by turning it into a kind of a fairy tale. That is, that there's a dragon sleeping, and that she is on an adventure, and she needs to save her family. So the only part that is technically true of her story is that, in fact, she is trying to save her family. That is the task. And that's the story in a nutshell. That's the story in a nutshell. I don't know if you want more than that.
Yeah, well, we can certainly come back to that. I would like to hear more. Can we go to Calypso?
Hi.
Hey.
My name is Calypso Cragg, and I am 16 years old, and I have made my second short film, which is called Isolated. And I really made Isolated because I was really frustrated with lockdown, and I guess everyone has been feeling quite trapped. And I wanted to do something with the restrictions that we had. We only had 3 people working on my short film, and yeah, I just wanted to make something that would channel my creativity and give me a purpose, and I guess a reason to wake up every morning. And yeah, I really enjoyed making it, and it's brought me so much joy. So yeah, I'm honored to be part of this festival.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Could we go to is it Emmalie next? Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No, that's fine. It's Emmalie. It's the same as normal.
Okay.
Thanks. My short film is called From A to Q. It's in block 6 of the shorts, and it's a story. I tried to explain it earlier, but it's quite difficult. For me, it's always difficult to explain, just because everybody sees it as like a coming out story, and it's really not a coming out story. It's about a girl who wakes up and basically realizes that she's got feelings for her best friend, who happens to be a girl, and she's trying to navigate through that. But it's not a coming out story. She does not come out, in the film. It's just it's more like a journey of self-discovery is what I call it. So yes, and I'm very excited about it. We shot it in October 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic, and we finished it in December. Post-production was done in December. And yes, and now I'm just very excited to be on the film festival circuit and it being shown here at this festival, because my first film was shown here 2 years ago as well. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. And Will Grave?
Hi, I directed and wrote the film Benchmarks, and yeah, it sort of deals with this question about what you would say with to your younger self. And last summer, I remember seeing on this like mental health charity social media site, it had this great quote, which was your older self would thank you for sticking around, and I thought it was a very, very powerful statement. And I've kind of, did my research into this whole area around mental health, and you find these crazy statistics like suicide is the biggest killer of men under the age of 45, and it's a kind of very powerful subject matter. And so Benchmarks is about a guy who's in his 30s who literally has a conversation with his 9-year-old self in a park. And he hasn't quite met his older self's expectations. He's kind of a bit in a hole. And he's in a bit of a dark spiral, even though the kid is very optimistic, as you kind of are when you're 7 or 8 usually. But there is a positive story, because at the very end of the film, the sort of turning point is when his 70-year-old self actually shows up and thanks him for sticking around. Now, the middle Mark can't hear him. He's in the future. He can only imagine his younger self, but it's a nice moment of closure in the film. And what I loved about working on this film is that you write the script and you think about how you're going the cinematography, how you're going to shoot it, all these things, but you get little details. So, for example, the makeup artist who came on board, Isabella Lata, she mentioned to me that in the community of people that have survived suicide, they use the semicolon as a symbol that their life didn't end; it continued. And I thought, what a lovely detail. And we actually integrated that symbol in very subtle ways in the film. So all the I's in the end credits are semicolons. The main actor, main Mark, has a little semicolon on his finger. Now, that's only going to be relevant to a really tiny number of people watching this film. But I always had this intention for this to be for a wider audience, but also for like those thousands of people or even millions of people out there who are having a really tough time, really struggling. And just to show that there is a potential light at the end of the tunnel if they just hold on, basically. And so I think the film is for them, very much so. And just very fortunate to have some great actors involved, great debuts from the child actor, Abby Cruitz, and middle Mark, Omar Hashmi. Really, really beautiful performances. And we had Emma Dale's Bhaskar Patel play old Mark, and they all gave up their time as a passion project, which I really appreciate to tell this story. So I'm very thankful to everyone in cast and crew for making it happen.
Wonderful. I just wanted to now sort of open the discussion up to everyone. And so I guess a common thread I noticed between all your films is I guess this very sense of an introspective look at oneself and pulling out a sense of truth. So both, Calypso Craig and Will Grave, you speaking about mental health in the way that you have, Emmalie kind of searching for this truth in yourself, and Angeliqa, you pulling from your kind of own activist background. So how have each of you found that process of kind of going into yourselves as a creative and putting your work as an idea from your head or your heart, and really kind of getting the idea down on paper?
I personally, I found it quite empowering to kind of get it out of my head, because I sometimes feel like it can be quite overwhelming to always have these thoughts and emotions going round and round. So to get them onto paper and to bring the story to life, and for other people to be able to see it, is really liberating. Yeah, that's what I found.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I loved. It was very nice just to let the words gush out. They just gushed, and then I would put it away and just come back and revisit and revisit. And I found out that I actually didn't really know what I was writing. I'm not even sure I still do. You know, like I found that putting the project up on Film Freeway, you know, the festival portal, that actually you know, pushed me to write a synthesis and to write a director's statement and so forth. And in doing so, in trying to synthesize this little piece in 3 lines or something, that's where I really came to sort of wrestle with exactly what did I mean when I wrote that. Because as an artist, I don't think about it too much, but I recognize that you know, in order for it to speak to people who aren't even going to see it, there needs to be a sort of clarity about it. And so I really appreciate this process of understanding what was inside of me and what came out, maybe after the fact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I had.
Go ahead, you go.
Oh no, don't worry, you can go.
You go.
I was just going to say that I had a similar experience with it happening afterwards. Kind of, yeah.
I kind of forgot. I didn't so much forget the question. I'm not sure if I can answer it per se, but I was going to say with me in writing my script or the story, you know, originally the script ended up being like 27 pages long, and it was way too long. And we worried that film festivals weren't going to take a film that was like in the middle, like, you know, that's quite a long short. So for me, it was like wrestling with like, basically by the end of it, the story had changed quite a bit. And so that was like kind of strange to have a finished story and then just having to change it like completely, even though you made the same exact, well, you didn't make the same exact film because the story is different, but you made the film that you intended on making, but just completely different, which was like really strange for me to do. Like we removed characters, we removed storylines, we removed, you know, loads of stuff just to get it down to like the important bits. But yeah, so that was like my struggle of trying to tell my story, but having to change it for other people, like because of the bigger picture, if that makes sense. But yeah, that was it.
I definitely identified with just trying to get something out of your system that seems to be there, whether it's like subconsciously there or consciously there. Mm-hmm. And I find like short films a bit like poems. So like, it's just, you know, if anyone has written poetry in their past, it's like something inside you and you just have to get it down on paper. And I have cracks at writing features, and they're such beasts. Like they're not just something you just, oh, I'm just going to sit down, crack out a feature. That doesn't work. And they're so structured, you know, there's a different animal basically. Yeah. But with the shorts I've written and made, I've actually, if I'm honest, it sounds bad, but I've kind of like done one draft, and I only had to make like very tiny tweaks. And just the idea is sort of there. It's just there. And I think what is interesting is once you get it out of your system, it's usually send it to other people, you know, because you want to make the film. And it's really encouraging when someone picks up a script and they're like, I like this, I want to get involved, you know, and they believe in the story. And I think that also tells you this isn't just a personal story, it's a story for many people as well. And people might get different things out of it, but I'm a big believer in, you probably will tell something that is quite personal to you, but you have to find something universal in that story to be a filmmaker that can make people feel from different aspects of life, you know. So it's not just a personal biography, let's say, you know. So that's how I guess I try and approach storytelling where I can.
Cool. I wanted to wrap by asking you all what you would like the audiences to take away from watching your films when they do come across this festival season?
I think with my film, I mean, I know it's an LGBT film, and obviously not everyone, not everyone that watches it is going to be LGBT, but I think the story behind it, like the point of it is, like, take your time with trying to figure yourself out. Like, this could mean anything, like for your job or for your education or for yourself or whatever. Like, you don't have to jump into it, like jump into the first thing. Like, this is why Alex doesn't come out as gay at the end of the film. There's this whole spectrum. She needs to work herself out, she's just been through a lot and stuff. And like I said, like, so yeah, I think people can just take away from it that, like, you just take your time, basically. Be patient with yourself and learn, and then, eventually you'll figure it out. But it just, don't rush into anything, basically.
I think for me, I sort of touched on it before, but for the people who are really struggling with their mental health, it is that kind of concept that your older self will thank you for sticking around, and as it's a very tough position to be in a place that dark. And I think one of the actors I'm working with on another film I'm doing later in the year, sadly his brother, he lost his brother to suicide, so the film was very personal to him. So I hope, even if it's not you, but you've had a close family member who's had really big struggle with mental health, I hope it can give some people some hope. And then, even people who aren't massively struggling with their mental health, it does deal with expectations, and how we don't always reach our own expectations at different times in our life, but that's okay. And at the end of the film, we don't know why old Mark seems more content. We don't know if he's rich, if he's poor, married, not married. We can just see in the performance that he seems very present. And it was important for me not to have any indicators why he seems to be in a better place. He just found some inner calm in his life. I think the message would have been kind of changed if you see this guy in a fancy suit and Rolex would be a really horrible way to do that film instead. But that's the kind of the takeout, I guess, I hoped for this film.
I'd say for me, I would just really appreciate it if people feel like that they have been heard in a way, and that they can relate to the story. I mean, I think everyone will hopefully be able to relate to the story because it's lockdown and we've all experienced lockdown. But I very much wanted to capture, the repetitiveness and the kind of, it's sort of feeling like one continuous week, just again and again and again. So yeah, just that people can relate and they know that they, that they're understood and heard.
I think for me, so this whole idea that this little girl is on a task in which she needs to see as a fairy tale, it's because essentially what happens in the film is her father has beaten her sisters during the night, and he's thrown them out of the house. And the sisters are throwing a rock at her window and saying, "You go down the hallway and open the door for us so we can come back in." And she's so terrified because he's sleeping, and he chose her to stay inside. So she's the little girl that he sort of saved, but he beat the older sisters and his the mother. And so now she's needs to go and open that door. Now the idea, I guess I would like two things to be taken away. One, goes through, she's a deeply troubled little girl because of the violence that she's witnessed. And sorry, can you not hear me?
Yeah, I think it's breaking up slightly. If you could, start from that first point you're making on the two takeaways.
Okay, so that you can see in this 10-minute journey that she goes through to open that door, you can see how troubled she is. you can see, you can imagine how difficult life is for that little girl in that household. And you can imagine, you don't even have to imagine, you can see that she's mentally ill. So you're not ill, but is going to have mental problems or has them already because of all the violence that she's surrounded by. And I guess the first takeaway is, although she wasn't kicked out of the house and she wasn't beaten by her father, she just watched. I think in my research after making the film and so forth, because I saw that the film seems to resonate with a lot of people, and I didn't really expect that. I think a lot more people than we think have watched violence, seen it as children, and I think it's underestimated the effects on those kids. And so in my research, I found a term called witnessed violence. And witnessed violence is acknowledged to be traumatic in, research circles, scientific research circles, and especially in war, contexts of war, where people have had to watch violence. They recognize that those people often have post-traumatic syndrome, PSTD, and so forth. And so the first takeaway, I guess, is that we needn't, or we can acknowledge if we've watched violence, or for those kids who grew up in violent homes, even if they weren't direct victims, watching violence, being forced to witness violence is a violence.
Yeah.
And we don't need to excuse that, or diminish that. It's often, oh, I just watched, or, didn't happen to me, thank goodness. I'm so sorry for who it happened to. But I think one step would be to say, well, that hurt me too.
Yeah.
And the second takeaway would be that in talking about things, I believe there's hope. I don't know what the solution is for all the kids in these homes, and especially this was written during lockdown. So, if you can imagine homes where you have a violent parent or a troubled atmosphere in some way, you can imagine life for these children with no option of going out to school anymore or anywhere. So, I think this little girl in this film, although she's deeply traumatized, at the end there's a message of hope, and I hope that will also be taken away.
Yeah. Well, Angeliqa, Calypso, Emmalie, and Will, thank you very much for your time today and sharing with us your stories. We look forward to watching your films, and once again, thank you very much from us, the Big Picture Film Club.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.